Hello. I am coming to you from a different room today. Thanks for joining me. I have Suki checking out some things in this room while I am filming. She was taking a nap a couple minutes ago, but no more. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, because if she's up from a nap, you know what that means. But I have put her cat carrier in this living room, her little soft cat carrier, because she likes to check that out and sit in it and wait for somebody to take her somewhere. So she gets a lot of fun jumping in and out of it. But I'm in the living room because I have been filming in my home office either at lunchtime or right after work, and I just don't want to be in there all the time. So here we are. This is a room we don't use a lot, but I love it. It's nice and cozy, and it's got a bay window, which is what Suki's doing right now, looking out the bay window. If I was confident that I could switch this around, I would do that, but I'm not. So I'm not going to. I don't have advanced skills yet. But this is where I do puzzles, because the coffee table is just the right size. It's as if I planned it for puzzles that I do, because I always have one going. Okay, I just want to give you a reading update. And what have I finished? Okay, what have I finished since the last time? I have finished The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne. I wasn't planning on reading this book right now in January, because it's a full 600 pages. But I'm so glad I did. I was influenced by someone that I'm connected with on Bookstagram. She was reading it, and I thought, why not? I said to her, I'll try it. If it really hooks me from the beginning, I'll read it now. Otherwise, I'll just wait and read it later. This is a rare hardback that I own, because I normally am looking for paperbacks, softbacks at the used bookstore. But I was at that used bookstore I mentioned where you buy 3, get 1 free, and they had this version of this book, and that was one of the books I was looking for, so I definitely grabbed it. And yeah, I was blown away by this writing. So it is about Cyril Avery, an adopted boy. We know this from the very beginning. It's on the flap. But John Boyne takes us through Cyril's life in first person, and he's looking back on his life and telling the story, telling stories about his triumphs and failures and challenges. I'm not going to get into detail about his particular challenges, but because it's not mentioned in this flap. So I went into this book cold. I only knew there was a young man protagonist at the beginning of the story, and it was a story about his some parts of his life, and I really enjoyed not knowing very much about it, because it just unfolds. John Boyne is excellent at writing dialogue, in my opinion, and so much of this book is funny in the dialogue exchanges. So in those places it's pacey. And it just kept me wanting to know what's happening next, It's not completely linear going through every year of his life. And it is linear, but it's chunked up into different pieces. And, you know, the whole book isn't dialogue, and the whole book isn't pacey and funny, because, of course, that's not how life is. So I'm a real fan of John Boyne. If anyone has a John Boyne recommendation that's almost as good as this one, I will definitely take it, because I'm hesitant now to read another one, because I feel like this is the pinnacle. But that's not a bad problem to have. Oh boy. Suki, please keep out of trouble. Suki gets in a lot of trouble in this room, and we'll find out probably why in a couple minutes. Another one I finished is this book, which was a Bookstagram discovery. I don't remember who was talking about it, but definitely CJ Reeds was. I had already started it by then, so I was happy to see that she was reading it in the video that I was watching of it. But this is a book that wouldn't normally attract me. The cover definitely attracts me because I love these New Directions covers. But the reason it wouldn't attract me is that it's got a bit of a dystopian premise in that this woman who goes to a hunting lodge that's owned by her uncle to hang out for a while in the woods. I don't remember what country it's set in, or even if we're told what country. But she has grown children. I don't know if she's married or divorced. But no husband is talked about as far as I remember. Is she drinking my cup of water? I don't know. So the dystopian part is that she goes out for a walk one day, and this invisible wall is apparent because she can't get beyond this invisible thing that's surrounding the area that she's walking in. And then in the distance, she can see a person who looks frozen and is obviously dead, but she doesn't know whether the entire world has died or if it's just the area. It doesn't matter though, because, well, I mean, after a while, she's assuming like, how many people have died? Nobody's coming. So all of that is left in the air, which is probably why I liked this book, because the book is actually about her survival. And everything that I've just mentioned is, Austrian, is talked about on the flap. So it is a translated book. She is an Austrian writer. But the cool thing that I discovered is that this book was written in the 70s. I thought I was reading a book that was written now. So I love that about it. It's a slow journal of the ways that she's having to learn how to survive, and certain things I never even thought of. Like, you know, if you've got a cow around, how are you going to make sure that there's enough stuff for the cow to eat? And if you have cats or dogs, how are they going to eat meat? It's really interesting. So that's really what kept me going on this one. And the other one that I'm reading is a book I read or I heard about on the Booktubers podcast, which is called My Autobiography of Carson McCullers by Jen Shapland. And of course, that title doesn't make any sense. So I was interested right away. And this book is actually about Jen Shapland's experience in researching Carson McCullers' personal letters in archives that she happened to be working in. She was an intern at the time. And personal letters that seemed to be love letters to a woman named Anne Marie. And I guess through history, there's been a question about whether Carson McCullers was a lesbian. She was married, which wouldn't tell you anything really, based on the time that Carson McCullers was a young woman. But also her therapist notes are transcribed and part of the archive. So it's her journey through those things. And it's also the author's journey through her own discovery of herself. So it's interesting. Then the other book I started is another one that I had seen talked about in the last year or so by podcasters, which is called Mayflies. I'm sure at the time this came out, everybody was reading it, but this is a Scottish novel, and it's about two friends who are in high school in a town where they don't have their families don't have a lot of money. Some of their family members have problems with alcohol, and they're growing up in rough surroundings. And two friends, Tolly and Noodle. Those are their nicknames. Tolly might be, yeah, Tolly is the actual name of one of the boys, but Noodle is the nickname of the main character, and I forget his real name. But I was actually going to stop reading this. I'm like on page 50, and it really got into dialogue between the friends and very Scottish dialect, and they're about to go to a big concert in Manchester, and I have so many other books to read. I just felt like, I don't know if I'm going to read this right now. But then I noticed I had marked a page 9, which I never do in library books. So I thought, wow, that's interesting. And it was because I marked a page about a conversation between Noodles. I think it's the librarian at his school and him. And my God, can I remember his name? Am I getting the characters mixed up? Anyway, I'm sorry about that. But the conversation she's having with him is, you know, she's asking about whether he's having a rough time at home, and he is, and it's challenging, but he doesn't really want to go into the details. And she says, listen, I don't care what the shrinks say. Some people's lives are about their parents and some aren't. I know I shouldn't say this, but just leave, pass the exams and go. Don't look back. You're a weirdo, and weirdos have to get out. She's meaning that she's really been supporting his idea of going to university. Honestly, you listen to Shostakovich. So do I, but I'm not 17. And then she goes on to say, you're too strange, and you like the writing of Jean Rhys. You like Norman Mailer and Maya Angelou, and you have to be with people who see that. And so when I reread that, I thought, all right, I'll hang in there, because I'm remembering now the really great writing in this book. So I'm going to hang in there with Mayflies. And what else do I have in this bag, Suki? Do you want to look with me? I'm going to get these out. And you can keep playing in there. Here we go. Okay. All right. Greenland is a library book, and it came in too early because I didn't think they even had it yet. But so it's by Devere Santos Donaldson. A lot of people are reading this right now, but I'm not going to read it right now because I have other things that I wanted to read first. So I'm going to return that to the library. Another one that I have on my list, to another author I have on my list to try and read this year, is Lauren Groff. And this one, Fates and Furies, came in as a library hold, but I also don't think I'm going to read this right now because I have other things that are coming in that I really want to read. So I'm going to return that and pick it up later. And finally, this thing I had reserved when it was on order, and I feel like I'm the first person to check it out. It must have just come in. Come Back in September by Daryl Pinkney. This is a book about Elizabeth Hardwick, who was a professor of his, who was teaching creative writing at Barnard in the early 70s. And it says taking that class with her changed his life. When the semester was over, he continued to visit her. Some people have said that they had trouble with the way that this book is organized. It's pretty dense. I don't know that I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna wait until I finish the Carson McCullers book, and then I'll take a look. So I'm not sure yet. Then what else? Oh yeah, I have this Young Bloomsbury book. It's a new one. I read about it in the New York Times. Young Bloomsbury, the generation that redefined love, freedom, and self-expression in 1920s England. These are the artists and writers and musicians of the time. And this, I love this period in history. I love reading about 1920s Paris and England and the US. I really enjoyed Hemingway's The Movable Feast, which takes place in this time. But I'm not going to read this yet. I am also going to return this to the library. It's like a record number of books that I'm taking back, but that's all right. They all happen to come in at the same time, and that happens every once in a while. If only you could see. I know what's on hold for me at the library right now, and so that's why I'm clearing out some of these other ones. So I'll talk about that later. And then the only other one that I have to mention, other than War and Peace, because that's a chapter a day that I'm reading, and I'm absolutely loving it. I'm taking little notes to keep track of the characters. And it's January 19th, but I'm on chapter 23 because I read ahead a little bit, and I love it. The other one I started on a lark is The Magic Mountain, which I've been really meaning to start. So I had one Audible credit left before I cancel the subscription again, because, you know, I have it for a little while and then I cancel it. And I thought, I heard Phil Chafee, who is a reoccurring guest on the book club review podcast, one of my favorite podcasts. He said when they were talking about long books that he listened to The Magic Mountain while he was walking, and he really loved it. He listened to it, he put it on a speed that was greater than 1. He said he put it on a pretty fast speed. I'm listening to it on 1.2, which is about the speed for me. But I love the narrator. I listen to the sample. I never buy Audible books that are fiction. I've never liked any of the ones that I've tried. This narrator I loved from the beginning. He's very engaging. He's really funny when the story's funny. And in the beginning, there has been funny parts, just at the part where Hans has arrived at the spa. I'm loving it. What's really even more interesting or adds to the interest, adds to the experience, is that I've been looking at the sections that I'm reading or that I'm listening to, and that I find them in this book, and I just kind of page through and read different paragraphs. And this is a different translation. So it's been really fun to see how this translation is different than the Audible translation. This one is a Vintage International edition, and it is translated by H.T. Lowell Porter. This is a book that's, it's an older edition from the, I don't know, it's got yellowed pages. And what I love is in the inside, it says, "To Emmanuel, Merry Christmas, 1995, love Mom and Dad." I got this at a used bookstore. So this is just something I'm going to listen to when I'm driving or walking, or probably not running, but walking. So it's going to be a while. This is going to be a slow burn in the background, but I'm really excited that I started it on Audible. I really recommend that Audible edition. It's like 33 hours or something. And so I think that's about it. I did get a used copy of Clarice Lispector's Complete Stories, and I've read 2 of her stories. I read maybe 1 a week. There's a group of us on Bookstagram that are reading her short stories in this Complete Stories book, and I am blown away. I'm still in the section of her early stories, and if she wrote that first story, whose name I'm forgetting the name of the story, but any of those stories in the first section, the early years, if she's writing those when she's in her 20s, the way she can write the interior life of ordinary people, unbelievable. So I'm really enjoying it, but that's also something that I will have and dip into here and there, and there's no timeline for me on that. I did want to talk about, really quick, star systems and book reviews. I just want to say really quickly before I wrap up that you will have noticed by now that I don't rate books by stars. I just don't have the brain that can come up with the criteria and then remember the criteria. I really admire people that can do that, because when I know somebody's rating style, then when Shawn the Book Maniac says that's a 5-star book or a 3-star or 4-star, then I'm getting to know what he means. But that's just not the way that I can think about a book. So there you go. That's that. Goodreads, well, I'll talk about that someday, but I'm just an occasional user of Goodreads. And of course, I don't use the rating system on Goodreads, but I try to keep myself updated. I do keep a physical, like a Word document in my laptop of the books I've read, and I've been doing that since 2020. So it's been fun. You know, I've got 3 years worth of books that I've read, and I love looking back on those lists. And so that's been really a fun thing to do. And I also keep an inventory on a spreadsheet of the physical books I own. I don't own hundreds and hundreds of books. So I thought while I own 90 books, I might as well create a spreadsheet and then I can add to it. So I own now about 100, and this way I can highlight the ones that I've read out of my own set of books, and then just keep a list of how many unread books I have, just so I understand where I'm at. I'm not somebody who needs to own a lot of books. So, and I do keep going through them from time to time and deciding which ones that I know that I'm just not going to read and that I don't need to own, so that I can donate them. Anyway, please reach out on any of these books that you've read yourself that I've already finished. And I know that Shawn the Book Maniac is reading Mayflies right now, and he's reading the new book called The New Life by Tom, oh gosh, completely forgetting now. I'd have to look it up on my iPhone, which I'm using right now. But we're both reading those books. I'm about to pick up The New Life at the library this weekend. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he has to say about Mayflies. Anyway, thanks for watching, and please leave any thoughts you have on the books I've finished, and of course any John Boyne recommendations. I'd appreciate it.